Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Blue Broad YouTube channel. I'm your host, Aris Amatakos, and Nathan, you're joining me once again, mate. How you going?
Not too bad. Yourself, Ari?
Good, good. It's been another great round of footy, so let's crack into things with another episode of The Rest. I don't think I actually said that at the start, but we're back again for another week, and I think the perfect place to start is the news that broke this morning. We're recording this on Tuesday the 12th, so the news that broke in the not early hours, but first thing this morning, David Noble has stepped down, or was he sacked? Did he resign? But he will not be coaching the North Melbourne Football Club from now. The last game against Collingwood was his final game. Nathan, what were your? Let's start with your thoughts. Your immediate thoughts when you heard the announcement.
Look, I wasn't surprised, and look, I don't think he was. I don't look. I do believe he resigned on his own terms, and you look at the culture of that club at the moment. I wouldn't. It just doesn't seem, out of question for him to just for the club to kick him out. I feel like he would have just probably got the feeling that his time was about to end and just pulled the plug himself. Do I think it was the right decision? Probably not. That's
Probably not.
immediate. Why not?
Yeah, I was kind of confused or shocked by that. Would you say that he was stiff, like partially done based off the list and whatnot have you?
Yeah, I mean it's purely based off what he had to work with, and
Yeah,
look, this is based off what we've experienced as Carlton supporters, where you've had your Bolton and Teague. Bolton, like as much as his list was still developing, he had it for quite a few years. I think
yeah,
2 or 3 years. So the justification of getting rid of him was a bit more accepting for most fans. Whereas look, Teague was a bit different, but I think Teague had a bit more of a developed list by that point, and they weren't
yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, we've seen it this year that well, I know we've had a
Yeah,
Chera and Hewitt, but we've still seen what this list is capable of.
yeah, 100%. And Noble really, I think that North team is on par with some of the worst teams the AFL has seen, and 2018 Carlton definitely I think matches this team,
Yeah.
where you simply do not ever go into a game thinking you have a chance. So I do think it was stiff, but like I said, I'm not surprised. Your thoughts? What do you think of it?
I mean, I it's tricky in my opinion because I obviously woke up and I was kind of maybe not shocked, but I was kind of was like, "All right, it's happened now," type thing. I was kind of a little bit just, "Okay, it's happened." Um, I do think he's been a little bit harshly done in terms of the media in a way. The talk of moving north to Tasmania, which will be continuously talked about, but I feel like that hasn't helped him and his football club at all. Obviously, the things happening with Horn Francis hasn't helped. I feel like he has been kind of screwed over in many ways, and I do think there's talent in that list. I mean, obviously, Davis Uniacke, Josh Simpkin, Zerha, Larky, Ben Mackay, Taron Thomas, if he wants to play football and cares. But like, there's talent there. I do think he hasn't got the best out of them. But at what stage does that blame have to move on to the players for not executing game plans, for not caring, for not trying? I'm not saying that they're throwing the towel or that they don't care, but I mean, it'd be a very interesting. I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall of that exit meeting or just the day to day goings on of that football club because it's quite obvious something isn't right, but we don't exactly know what isn't right. It's just obvious that something isn't. I mean, we're gonna have to find out if David Noble has been the sacrificial lamb. I don't know the review is still happening, or this is its final week. That has been carried out by Jeff Walsh and his whole motley crew. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Although I don't think this will be the final departure. I feel like we're going to see a mass exodus of backroom staff. Would you agree?
Oh, Yeah, I would agree. I just, I don't know, and I think we say this for a lot of clubs in the past that have sat at the bottom, and you think, when's it like ever going to turn? And it does, but not quickly. And I think this North team, I think they're still really far off. Just
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to say. I mean, things can change really quickly. Sorry with Collingwood this year, they probably had the list to justify the jump, but I just don't know. I think with the culture, when you're losing a coach, like I don't know how you can improve drastically, and hypocritical considering that's what Carlton just did. But we had the list with that switch. North don't
Yeah,
have a list with a coach switch, so you're given a team that doesn't really have a. They don't have a game plan. They don't have a set structure, and you're completely changing that. I I
yeah.
don't see how a team can really improve.
I mean, they're obviously not playing for anything. I'm not saying that they're going to tank for the rest of the season, but if North don't win a game for the rest of the season, I would not be surprised in the slightest. There's no real. I mean, you obviously don't want teams to tank, obviously, because integrity and all that. But let's be honest, there's nothing for them to play for. Even if they do, even if they start winning, it's not going to mean anything to any of the players because of the tumultuous circumstances that whole club is in. It's not like they have a good foundation and all they're lacking is the on-field results. Even if they do win games, it's not going to fix anything, in my opinion. So they are kind of a sitting duck, waiting for the end of the season and waiting for more. It's almost as if they're waiting for more bad news. I say bad news, news of sackings and departures and whatever. They kind of just need to start fresh, which is obviously harsh to say because they're a football club that, I mean, 7 years ago we're playing finals. 8 years ago we're playing in the preliminary final. So it is very like I don't even know. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I struggle to empathize in a way because I know I've been here and I know how much we were punched down by the rest of the competition and the lack of respect we were given. So it's kind of I feel like it's North's turn. I feel like one team every year has to be the whipping boy. It's North this year, and I think it'll be North next year and potentially the year after that.
I mean, look, the problem is I've put this down the run sheet. Priority pick for North. I mean, it's a
I was
discussion
going
that
to bring that
goes
up.
around
Yeah.
every year for whoever's at the bottom. Okay, well, I mean, simple question: do they deserve one?
It's tricky. It's tricky because if you look at some of the worst sides, maybe of this era. So if we say maybe from 2010 onwards, we were appalling in 2018. Didn't get a priority pick. Brisbane have been not great in similar eras. St Kilda weren't amazing for a period of time either. Maybe Gold Coast is the only side in the past 10 years that's been given a priority pick. So you say, do they warrant it? I feel like they do need assistance. I don't know if that's a Firstly, it should not be pick 1 and 2, regardless of if it's a priority pick or whatever it is. I do think they need assistance. Is that a pick maybe in end of the first round, mid second round, end of second round, whatever? I don't know, but I do think they need assistance.
Yeah,
Obviously, your thoughts.
yeah, no, they do. Because I guess you get your number one pick, which 90% should walk in as a top player in that club, but otherwise, when you sort of have to wait until your mid second rounds, very rarely. There's always one or two in a draft that are like those ones that pop out you don't expect,
Yeah,
but the chance of that happening is very low. So you're guaranteed a start, and that's it really. And I think they need probably another one just to give hope at least, because I just don't think one is enough to. I don't know, because you've seen with Horn Francis, there's so much he can bring to that side. He's
yeah.
I
I
just
mean,
they need more. They do need
they
more.
they are kind of a victim of their own. I mean, maybe not. demise or their own like unluckiness, if you're to call it that. But if you look at last year's national draft, Horn-Francis at pick 1, who's played well but hasn't really set the world alight like other pick 1s have. They've got Paul Curtis, Miles Bergman, Jackson Archer, Josh Gota, who haven't really influenced a lot this season. The year before that, Will Phillips, Tom Powell. I mean, that whole Logan McDonald situation. I mean, you look at that and you think, was that a missed opportunity? 2019, Charlie Cobham, Jack Marnie, Flynn Perez. They haven't really influenced. I know there's a late picks, but and then you go 2018, Taron Thomas, Curtis Taylor, Bailey Scott. So there's no player in that group of players who has put their hand up in a sense or has taken that leap forward in terms of development. And perhaps the only player, I mean, if you go back to 2017 with Luke Davis-Gignac, who has had a pretty good season, probably been North's shining light this year. So their previous draft selections have kind of not been as good as they can be, if that makes sense. And just to relate it back to Carlton, obviously 2018 was our lowest point. 3 years earlier, we draft Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow, David Cunningham, Jacob Wiedering, Jack Silvagni. 4 of them stapled into the 22, and David Cunningham, who's an X-Factor player who should probably be in the 22 when he's fit. That's 5 massive ticks. North haven't... I don't see North in 2-3 years' time having that same draft class or that draft period over a couple of years where 5 players will come into the 22. I feel like they have picked poorly, and maybe that will factor into the AFL's decision of giving them a priority pick because they're like, if you're going to waste it again, why should we give it to you?
Yeah, look, another factor I don't think helps is that, and I mean, this is giving offence to probably North Melbourne supporters, but North Melbourne isn't a big club, and I don't think players are. I don't think they'd have the same passion of staying at North Melbourne when you're probably getting offers from a Richmond, Carlton, Essendon, Collingwood, Adelaide, West Coast, where the culture is much more developed. Whereas North Melbourne, I don't see the appeal to stay there. Even 1 or 2 years when it's slightly getting better, I don't know. I just think there's not much for them to hold on to at the moment, just in terms of keeping players there. And I guess obviously draft players don't get a choice where they go, but year or two after.
I mean, the situation with Mr. Horn-Francis is going to be interesting because if he turns around and says, "Stuff this, I want to go home," that's probably the doomsday scenario. Because not only do you lose your number 1 pick from last year, but that sends a message to the competition saying, "Don't come to this club." And notoriously North, the Shinboner spirit, they've had historically they are one of the teams with stability, notoriously. And even with their keep north-south, when the relocation continues to rear its ugly head for whatever expansion team, they do have a solid foundation of nowhere. North Melbourne, we are who we are. That is slowly starting to lose its touch a little bit. And should they get... I mean, let's just go back to the priority picks ever so briefly. Should they get it? Let's just say they get a priority pick. That's the end of the first round, pick 19. Should they be forced to trade it? Yes or no?
I don't think they should be forced to.
If it's pick 1 or pick 2, priority pick at the start of the draft.
If it's one of those two as a priority pick, that's a hard question. It's a real hard question to put out there.
Because they have talent. Like I said, they've got these kids who, yes, they have drafted not great over the last couple of years, but they still have top 10, top 20 players who obviously went top 10, top 20 for a reason. If they are given this priority pick and they're forced to trade it, isn't that what they need to bring in some experienced players? I mean, the conversation about Josh Kennedy from Sydney and Trent Cotchin and all these guys, kind of like what Luke Hodge did with Brisbane, kind of what Dale Thomas did to Carlton to a lesser extent, but still kind of similar. Would you reckon that could be a possibility?
It could be, but I still like go back to what I just said about like culture thinning. I don't know why these players, like you've just said, why would they want to come to North? I guess it would. Yeah. I could only see it happening if whatever club it is forcing them out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that could be the only scenario, but you also have to look at the ambition of the players. Like, do they want to be remembered as what do they want to be remembered as? Kind of like, I assume Luke Hodge. Luke Hodge, based off his decision to go to Brisbane, shows that he has a little bit of a selfless personality. He wants to help people and teams, and he wants to be remembered as this person who really didn't have to go to Brisbane. I mean, I'm not sure. I think he was pushed out by Hawthorn to an extent, but could have gone to another pretty good team and walked into the starting 22, despite his age, because he was that good. So you're going to have to be smart with the players that you go after and pick one. Say they do get pick one, that could be that you could package that up for some pretty good talent, especially for a side maybe like Geelong, who are desperate for young talent, maybe for a Collingwood, who I know do have young players, but the bridge between their 21-year-olds and 29-year-olds is kind of like it's very far, basically. Is what I'm trying to say. So you could look to package for some players there. Who knows, right? So, I mean, yeah. Final conclusive answer: priority pick, yes or no for North Melbourne?
No, because
I would tend to agree. Based off how poor Carlton were in 2018, I think North, well, potentially are worse. They're not that far off. Now, one more brief discussion North Melbourne. Obviously, David Noble is leaving. Who shall replace him?
Look, I think this is a weird call, but I think an assistant coach from another club, and I only say that because of Voss. I think someone who has sat under a head coach and watched the processes, and I mean, this is a very random call, but I'm guessing assistant coaches probably have a bigger role in actual tactical gameplay than the coach itself. I think a coach is more that they're going to do more the sort of development, character building sort of things, whereas the assistants are more, they tend to be the game planners.
Yeah, they're more micromanagers. Assistant coaches, more than likely.
Yeah, I think. Look, I can't really throw out any names because I'm not. It could be anyone, but I think a good idea would to be look for an assistant coach at probably a higher up club. You don't want a lower club, but definitely an assistant. I don't think searching for ex-coaches is a good idea. If you want to become fresh again and you want to reset, that is not the way to go. It is basically, it's calling for, it's like, okay, we are stuffed. Let's get in someone who's won a premiership, and that's just going to work. You need someone who's, up to date, current, really invested in the game right now, instead of someone who may have had 6, 12, 18 months out of the game. And I just don't think it's the right thing for them.
Yeah. So, of course, Lee Adams is the current caretaker, who is the assistant coach for North Melbourne. So with your statement now, I'm assuming you're ruling out Alistair Clarkson as a potential coach for North Melbourne.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see that. It just would feel weird. Possibly, and only because he's not as much out of the game as probably the others. But that's the only reason.
There's a man that springs to my mind, and that's one Mr. Ashley Hansen, who we have currently at Carlton's assistant coach, coached in a senior role in round 2 against Western Bulldogs due to Michael Voss being under health and safety protocols. That is probably one of the better examples of someone you're talking about, like that assistant coach that is risky. Obviously, we've felt it with Voss, how good it can be, and with David Teague and Brendan Bolton, how bad it can be. But do you think, I'm assuming you're saying this list isn't in Okay, where is North Melbourne's premiership window in terms of what years
Uh,
should they be looking at as thinking, okay, these are the years that we should be targeting? Because I feel like if once you identify that, that's probably the best course of action into finding a new coach. If North Melbourne, for whatever reason, let's just say that they think their premiership window is 2024 to 2027, it's not, but let's just say that they think it is. Then bringing in someone like an Alistair Clarkson could potentially be the best idea. Having come in for next season and the season after that to build good foundations, and then once he's got that list ready, then they can kick on and win a flag. Whereas if they think that their premiership window is in 10 years, 15 years from now, for example, they could potentially bring in someone like a Brendan Bolton, who we're obviously speaking from personal experiences because we obviously know a lot about Carlton's tenure under Bolton. For how poor the results were, he actually did do a lot of good in terms of developing players, developing a culture, and developing sound tactical, like mindsets. That's
yeah,
partly the reason why Carlton was so good in the back end of 2019, because they were given that offensive flexibility that Teague offered when he was caretaker, with also staying defensively solid from the foundations that Bolton built. So you have to look at the dynamic between what Noble was teaching them, and then what the next coach will teach them. But I feel like that's obviously a question that someone smarter than us do should probably answer and should probably decide. But if you were to put a name on it, if you can, who should they go for? If you can think of one.
no, I agree with the Ash Hansen thing. And I saw that today. I was like, that would probably be a good move.
Yeah.
But I don't know why he would leave the Blues at this point in time. If we look at what they're developing, I'd be surprised. I think he'd really. That's the thing. I would only think he would go for money if that's the case. Like, why would he leave what he's got at the Blues for North?
I
Apart
think
from money.
it's an ambition thing though, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah,
like
it
I feel
is.
like
It is.
despite like an assistant coach is a good job, but being an AFL senior coach,
It is different. It's
yeah.
level up.
So would you say that Ashley Hansen is probably the best in terms of the mold or the type of coach you think that North should go after?
Yeah, I would, and I think we're probably forgetting names anyways.
Of
But
course.
he's someone. I think he's at least seen now what it takes to build a list, not build a list, but build a culture and environment. And usually the list, will work itself out as long as you've got that culture. And you saw it with this year, Chera, Hewitt, like these guys come in, which they would never have come in 2020, 2019. Like,
Yeah.
it's when you build that culture, players start coming. But yeah, I back Hansen for the job.
Yeah. Obviously, we hope he doesn't go, of course, because
I'm sorry.
he's, by all accounts, very integral to the way that Carlton play, which is obviously another argument in saying that these assistant coaches are potentially overlooked in a sense because they do micromanage and they do have a better connection with players historically. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below of who they should get, because it's going to be interesting to see some names floating around. But I think it's time to move on from North because we could be here speaking about them all day. Let's go to the story which probably would have started the show if it wasn't for David Noble's departure, and that is one Mr. Jack Ginnivan, who we continuously talk about and is continuously in the headlines. Now, not for off-field antics, which have been over-dramatised for a long period of time, but for his ducking antics over the weekend, and it caused a hell of a shitstorm, especially on social media, which it always does. But what are your thoughts on maybe not him doing? Let's go with that action itself, and then the media's reaction and people's reaction to Ginnivan doing it. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, look, I was just going to say it's the action I hate rather more than the person itself because, we've sort of spoken, he's good for the game in terms of what he does. It's, I don't care who's doing it. It's that action itself. And we talked about consistency of umpiring decisions. That screws with it. That really messes it up. And that causes an issue because players will jump on that trend. And it started to happen.
just cutting in like one Mr. Zach Fisher over the weekend,
Yeah,
who did pretty
exactly.
much the exact same action to kick his first goal. So it is spreading. It is spreading.
I mean, we saw him in that clip at training of him teaching whatever that clip was.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, just takes away from just playing the game.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It's a direct attempt at manipulating, not the result, but a call or which I don't like. It just feels wrong.
Yeah, I hate. I agree with you. I don't necessarily hate the action because I feel like I don't hate the action because it's like if you do it, then you do it, and it's kind of like you are. I mean, he's getting hit in the head, like he's being clotheslined, so he's obviously like it's not him like avoiding any sort of pain, right? He's just winning a free kick. But what I dislike is actually maybe I'll rephrase that. In my opinion, that action is or the ducking action. So lowering your body into a tackler, which Ginnivan does, which Zach Fisher did, which Joel Selwood's done, which a lot of other players have done over the previous years. And I feel like just quickly, it's being highlighted more with Ginnivan because Collingwood player, blonde hair, bit of an asshole, and he kicks goals. They're the four main reasons why everyone's talking about it, rather than Joel Selwood, who plays in the midfield, pretty unassuming, doesn't really kick a lot of goals directly from those free kicks, etc. Right? Just on a side note. But in my opinion, that action should be treated the exact same way as fending off. Dustin Martin maybe made it famous, but that fending off action is now treated as your prior opportunity. So if you pick the ball up and do that within half a second and you get tackled, that's your prior, that's holding the ball. Even if the player grabs your arm and slings you to the ground, that should be a sling tackle, but it's not, it's holding the ball. That's how it should be for this decision, for these types of decisions. It's umpires are calling too much to the book, in my opinion. It's either, they're being told to call too much to the book. So when they do make one decision based off nuance, it is completely inconsistent, right? Which we saw over the weekend with Ginnivan being called holding the ball for an action that he did 5 minutes earlier, being paid as a high tackle. Umpires need to be given free rein to make calls based off nuance every single time a decision is made, because footy played and footy isn't played based off this thing happens, then this, then this, then this. A lot of things can happen which disrupt that momentum or that chain reaction, right? So I think that ducking action, just to conclude, that ducking action should be treated as prior opportunity. If you're tackled, regardless of if it's high or not, it's holding the ball. That, in my opinion, would stop that action straight away.
Yep. No, yeah, you're spot on there, and that's I agree. It's just gonna like I say, messes with the whole consistency thing of calls, and that's what frustrates us. It's not the only sport in the world, but I feel like it's one of the major. Yeah, like it's just one of those big sports that you look at and think, geez, I don't think I could umpire a game 100% because it's just not clear what is meant to be called and what's not. And I guess I can understand why umpires get sucked into it, because obviously we see on a camera is like you see wide and you can see everything, whereas they're closer to it. So they're not looking at their legs half the time, if that makes sense. I don't know what they would be. I can understand it, but it's down to players and umpires. But I think just player-wise, I don't like it. I really don't like it.
Yeah, and also just touching on that nuance point of view, or that nuance argument as well. If Jack Ginnivan is being tackled by Tom De Koning, for example, I feel like it can be very hard for De Koning not to get Ginnivan high, purely off the fact that he's double his height. Like when if Aaron Sandilands tackles Corey Durden, it's going to be a hard tackle every single time, because he literally can't get that low to tackle him not around the head. So that's just another example of just be more nuanced in your decisions,
Yeah.
and then this will all go away. Like I do think it is the umpire's fault to an extent, but also just stop doing the action. It's not a good look for the game. I think Ginnivan's a great player for the game. I think he's exactly what the AFL needs. Box office, Collingwood supporters love him. Everyone else hates him. Similar Cody Waitman, similar Stephen Milne back in the day, and all these other players. But that action, get rid of it, in my opinion. I don't like it at all.
Agree.
Okay. That was much more concise than I thought it was going to be, but it's good that we don't speak about that for long. But let's touch on something that happened and it kind of flew over my head. It was the Brisbane Lions losing 9 players due to health and safety protocol. Why should this continue? Should this still be a rule that's in place, in your opinion? The maybe if you test positive, okay, just should the health and safety protocol rule be as strict as it is?
It should. I think it will take a while for it to not be this strict, purely because it would cause a lot of issues just around the integrity of the league, of just being like, oh, you've done it for a bit, now you're getting rid of it. I'm sure a lot of players play with other illnesses. I could not see, as if it's never happened, where players are playing with probably worse than
That's
COVID.
exactly
In
the
all
point,
honesty, in all honesty, but I can understand it for something that spreads that quickly. It couldn't be a much worse situation. I think it's there to protect clubs and saying, well, if you've got 2 players, get them out quickly and doesn't affect everything else. But I guess Brisbane, they got the short end of the stick, and there's 9 players are out.
Costing 4 points as well.
But look, it's the best time for it to be happening for them. I mean, isn't it like 3 months until you can go without it? I think again. So like,
you'd rather it happen now than preliminary final week.
But on the contrary, you can say, well, what if it happens to a team, first week of finals?
Well, that's another integrity issue. That
so it's
if 12 players go down for week 1 of the finals, it's like, well, what are we doing here? If it happens on grand final week, I feel like the AFL can probably just delay the grand final. Well, I feel like they've got the capability to just do that.
The AFLW, I'm pretty sure this year they postponed one of I think Brisbane Collingwood because of that reason. I think so. I think like half the team had it.
Yeah.
That's a precedent to say, well, if you can do it with them.
Yeah.
Although I don't know. The only thing, I think you need to get rid of the pre-finals bye and you leave it floating, in a sense, if that makes sense. So if there's like a week where all teams just get screwed, okay, here it is, putting right there.
Yeah.
That's good. That's the only way you can fix it for finals.
Yeah, you could. I think that's potentially something that could work. I don't necessarily think that, I mean, when are we going to change? Is it next year? Is it next year? In my opinion, it should be.
Yeah, it should be.
It should be next year that these guys are high performance athletes. They've got some of the, maybe not the best medical care around them, but they've got high quality medical people around them. Yes, it is still infecting a lot of people, and yes, there is still a lot of damage that is happening in this country because of it. But I think it's been a while with the AFL has, and teams have been through enough of it for it to just be treated like another illness. Like you said, players have 100% played through worse. I think one example springs to mind. Zach Dawson played the 2009 grand final on an IV drip before the game and at halftime. So if he had COVID in that scenario, he would have been far fitter to play than what he did play with.
Yeah.
So it's what are we doing here type thing.
I don't think it helps that a lot of the players, especially the young guys, live with each other. So Like if
Yeah,
one
yeah,
gets them, quite a lot of them are stuffed as well. So I
yeah,
don't think it's just if one player in the club gets it, all of them. It's just who they live with. I
yeah.
think they live in, usually 4 or 5 people. So
It is
probably a
what it is.
loss Brisbane didn't want though. And I guess that's where you can say, well, look, it can affect, especially a team that is wanting like top 2.
It
That
did cost
is
them
the
four
type of
points. I think that's undeniable. It cost them 4 points.
that loss sort of puts him in the fighting for third and fourth rather than first and second now, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and it's
That's
something
where I
that they
see it.
didn't need.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you can categorically say it cost them 4 points. Fully fit, maybe not fully fit, but a fully fit to the extent that they would have been. Brisbane against Essendon at the Gabba, 9 times out of 10 they win. With
Yeah.
those 9 players out, with that whole uncertainty, and the psychology around having 9 players out for the players that are playing, it drops that percentage to a far more 50-50 game, which it potentially shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Let's touch on the last talking points ever so briefly, and it is the floating fixture has been scrapped, but not really, but it hasn't. The AFL have flip flopped in a sense, but have kind of half assed it, in my opinion. They've gone with next year, rounds 1 to 15 will be set time, date, location, everything. And then 15 onwards, who knows? So the floating fixture is dead, but kind of not really.
It's the worst. I do not understand. I get it for the whole purpose of we want to put good games on at the end, but they didn't even do it this time around. I feel like how many, like example, this weekend, you have Carlton Geelong and Fremantle Sydney at the exact same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
So it clearly doesn't work. You had Hawthorn Adelaide as your Sunday 3:20, which, it's
With
Sunday,
all
but
due
it's a free to
respect,
air game.
yeah,
Like,
it's
ugh,
one of the prime time slots.
yeah, and even I look at our purposes. We wanted to go to the Adelaide game, the Blues are playing in, but we had no time. I mean, no idea what time, what day. Like it
Yeah,
screws you. You want to go traveling. Well, no, travel. You know what I mean. You want to go interstate. You want to
so, yeah,
plan. You can't plan, and it's frustrating for a lot of supporters, especially. I mean, I wouldn't just say Vic supporters living interstate, but everyone. It
yeah,
affects
yeah.
everyone
For every
across the league.
supporter, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just do it. There was no problems before COVID. The only
Yeah,
reason the floating fixture was the thing was because of COVID.
yeah,
We knew every single fixture from from February. We knew every single fixture till round 23. It was fine. It was no problem. Yeah, you had some games like I remember 2019. It was Melbourne Sydney on a Friday night on a Saturday night, which was like 17th versus 15th or whatever. But yeah, right, you run that risk. Fine, you run that risk. But I feel like that risk doesn't out. I feel like that risk outweighs the announcing it 4 weeks before it's happening because that leaves players in limbo as well, and it
yeah.
leaves fans in limbo. It's just not good.
Like the only last thing I'd add, I mean, I guess it sucks for supporters as well. And I'm pretty sure North, the thing with the floating fixture is that it chooses which teams get free to air, etc. I think North have only had one Channel 7 game, and that was Good Friday.
Good Friday,
So,
yeah.
like, you'd expect with a full fixture, they'd at least just get 2 or 3, 2 or 3 more. So it does hurt fans. Not all fans are able to get, pay TV subscription stuff. So,
Yeah,
not a good idea. Not a good idea.
yeah, and I feel like every team should have at least maybe not one free. Yeah, I think every team should have at least one free to air game every season. To be honest,
Yeah.
because we are living in a time where, especially after COVID, people can't really afford it. Some people can't, right? So
Yeah.
just give every team at least one free to air game, but be smart about it. Don't put Hawthorn Adelaide, with all due respect, on the Sunday Arvo. Have it Hawthorn versus Sydney or whatever. Like bad team again with all due respect to a semi good team. Like
Yeah.
Be smart. Be smart about it. I feel like that's the best way to go about it. But let's move on and let's finish with the rest moment of the round. And I feel like the man above you kind of says it all. There's no real competition to it, but it was Noah Anderson after the siren. Did you watch this game live? Were you watching as an
No, so I was at the move. I was at the movies. I was about to go in watch Thor, and I checked the score before the ads started, and I think it was when it was like 77-92, I think, something like that. I was like, yeah, it was like 18 minutes. I didn't see how long left. It was 18 minutes. I was like, okay, Richmond have got this. Movie's about to start. I check and I see 94-92. I was like, yeah, I was like, what? And then I look at when they kicked the last goal, and I saw it was only 2 seconds to when it said full time. So I was like, this was after the siren.
Yeah.
So as Thor is starting, I'm just turning my brightness down on KO and just rewatching it. And wow, what a moment! That in terms of the rest moment of the round, Jesus, that is up there. That is probably one of the best.
Yeah, if not the best of the season in terms of. I mean, I can't quite remember other moments, but it was. Yeah, I was watching this live. I was about to leave the house or was getting ready to go out for dinner on a Saturday night, and I was running late because I was like, I can't stop watching this game. And when it was kind of a calamity of errors. Obviously, Grimes drops the mark. Holman picks it up, sprays it across the face. Day marks it, and then kick inboard, which we didn't see. We don't actually see whether or not the kick is actually successful until after. But he marked it. My mind goes back to Carmichael Hunt. I felt like it just had to go through, and it did. And it was, I feel like we were due. Has there been a kick after a game decided after the siren? Oh yeah, Jordan Dawson, of course.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I can't quite remember. So, I mean, yeah, that was, It just, I feel like as a footy fan, I don't really like Richmond, right? But as a footy fan, it was just so good. And to see him after the game saying he's under 13s semi-final, it was great. It was unreal. I loved it.
It was terrific.
Okay, I think that is plenty for this episode. We've discussed a lot. We've gone in depth. Nathan, thank you very much for joining me as always. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the Blue Broad YouTube channel. Of course, see you guys next time and goodbye.